Hello. Well, it's not normally I'm here on a Tuesday evening streaming live. I'm going to take this earpiece. I don't like this earpiece. There we are. Normally, I don't stream on a Tuesday evening. I normally stream live on a Thursday and vlog on a Sunday. But this vlog tonight has been probably up and coming for at least 10 years. It's been on and off. We half recorded a podcast and things happen and it's just life. But we've managed to crack a date. Paul is the most busiest person I've ever known in the world, unless he's always trying to avoid me, but we'll find out some secrets. Let's just bring him on and he can introduce himself. Here we are. Guys, it's world renowned. What do people call you? Do they call you a legend, Paul? I don't know.
Renowned in a small bushcraft world.
yeah.
All right, thank you for having me. Thanks for doing this. This looks good. The technology is astounding. It all seems to be working. So
it's changed since we first met. What, about 10 years ago, or maybe a bit longer? I'm trying to work out.
Well, yeah. I mean, I can't actually remember when we first met, but I remember the first recording we did, which was for a podcast you used to be involved in. I don't know if I can mention its name.
Yeah, mention it.
Yeah, so the Urban Bushcraft podcast that you used to do, and I have to say that was one of the inspirations for me doing my own podcast ultimately, because I thought this is a cool format. But yeah, I mean, we met in Hyde Park, wasn't it?
It was. Do you remember?
Me, you, and Ray, and then we sat there with your microphone, and I can only, at the time I was like, oh, Mark knows what he's doing, and I'm sure you did know what you're doing, but it was just like, oh yeah, laptop's there, microphone there, Mark knows what he's doing. But now, 10 years or 12 years or however long it is down the line, I fully appreciate how hard that must have been to tidy up that audio to make it broadcast worthy.
And squirrels and pigeons and
kids kicking balls around and yeah.
It's all fun and games.
So you're a true pro, and you have been for a long time. So.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Right, let's just quickly say a few hellos, and then we'll crack on. We're here. We've got till 9 o'clock with Paul. So if you've got any questions, pop them in the comments, either on Facebook or YouTube, and we'll get them all round. Right, Harold is tuning in from Canada. Paul's very well known in Canada, and I know that. Michael, hey man, how you doing?
Hey Michael, hey.
Austin's here. Austin's in here. Susan, good evening. Mark and Paul, hey, how you doing?
Good evening.
Gustavo's tuning in from Brazil.
Hey Gustavo.
Max tuning in from Manchester, and we've got a whole lot of people. And like I say, if you want questions about, I don't know where we're going to go with this, because there's no agenda, but there's only a few things. Leo, hey, how you doing?
Hey Leo.
And Dan, Silver and Scouts.
Hey Dan.
Paul, I've just got to say something, right?
Go on.
So you use this photo of me, this firelighting in your online course, and every now and then I'll bump into someone new and they go, "Oh, are you the guy off the Paul Kirtley course?" Yeah. Right. So I get no credit for this at all, at all. But I was at a scout event 2 weekends ago, and someone said, "Oh, Mark, there's a guy that does all this bushcraft stuff. He does some online courses. You should do some stuff with him. His name is Paul Kirtley," and he's like the first person I've ever met in scouting that's just discovered you. So
Did you tell him that he hadn't studied the course that closely? Because if he had, he'd know you were actually in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey Justin.
Hello Justin.
Terry's in the house. Terry got the first question of the day at lunchtime. He wants to know, when is the next curry night?
When is the next curry night? Well, we can't actually broadcast that in public, can we? Because you being big man in the woods, you'll just get mobbed by all your big man fans. Going down Brick Lane. If we were to announce the date, they'd be camped out. They'd be like the Beatles.
Mate, it's more like it's the Paul Kirtley. Mark Hayden, cool. Right. So Paul, if no one knows you, I don't know how long is it going to take you? 30 seconds.
Yeah, well, I never assume that anybody knows me. I mean, 99.9999% of the population in the world don't even know who very famous people are, right? So you never assume that anybody knows you. So, I mean, why are you talking to me? Well, I'm a bushcraft instructor. I have taught a lot of scout leaders as well over the years, both in terms of people who've come on my courses, but also, you know, helping out you and Terry and other people within scouting. And that's always a pleasure to do. And I'm always happy to do that. I helped out with the Haynes manual as well, the scouting manual. It was a pleasure to be involved in, and Austin, who's on here as well, had something to do with that, and Terry. So it's great to be involved in that. Most of the time I'm running Frontier Bushcraft, which I see you've got my logo up there, thank you. And it's, you know, online courses, field courses, overseas expeditions, and you know, I had a book published last year. So it's education is what I'm about, and it's education in the sort of bushcraft and wilderness skills space is what I do, and I've done that for a long time. Oh, thank you. And this wasn't even planned. Mark's got a copy of my book closer than I've got a copy of my book, so.
I just need it for firelighting, that's what it is.
Okay, well, yeah, it'll work. It's good quality paper, it'll go a long way.
Suzanne's saying she's never heard of you, so I'm so glad.
That's fine.
Honestly, sir, check out Paul's stuff. We'll be talking about his online stuff, but I know Paul's done a whole load of stuff for scouting. And I have to say, I would say 90% of my stuff that I've been learning about firelighting and all the other bushcraft stuff is from doing Paul's courses and stuff. But we'll talk about that in just a short while. Right, so we'll talk about the book in just a few moments. Paul, have you not paid the electricity bill, by the way? Is that why you're so dark?
I'm not dark.
Your background's all blurred.
You don't want to see my background.
It's just all books anyway.
Well, there's books, and there's, you know, there's a wardrobe full of sleeping bags, and yeah. Hi, Jeremy. No, I mean, it's just, yeah, there are a lot of books there, but there's a lot of other junk as well in this room, so people don't need to see that.
Right, so let's
I don't have a fancy man shed with, like, you know, sort of mood lighting like you've got. It's pretty awesome.
I don't have police cars going past me either. I'm trying. No. I've lost the control. There's a control I can change the colors. I could put it to green or something to.
That would be more woodsy.
Yeah.
If it was all green.
Right. Yeah. All right. Okay. Mark, can you confirm you know me from my daughter? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Dave. All right. Cool.
He's not lying. Dave's not lying.
So Paul, people probably, if they do know you, they know a bit about your background about working with Ray Mears. How long were you working with Ray for?
Yeah, so I started assisting on courses with Ray Mears part-time back in 2003. He invited me to do that after I'd done quite a lot of courses with him as a student, and that was good. That was a great opportunity, and it was funny. I'd done a course with him and Lars Falt up in Sweden, and we were both on the same. Myself and Ray Mears were on the same flight on the way home, as were a bunch of other people traveling back via Stockholm. And when we were waiting for our connection in Stockholm, he came over and said, "Oh, I've been thinking, would you be interested in assisting on some of the courses in the UK?" And I said, "Yeah, actually, I would. That would be awesome." And I had actually been thinking about how do I, you know, I'd quite fancy doing that. How do I ask? So it was just like we both thinking the same thing. So that was cool. And yeah, so I started. That was in 2003. And I started on some courses then. And then a few years later, I was offered a full-time job to go and work with him and his company full-time. So I did that. And I did that up until the end of 2010. So it was about 7 years in total. And then I started Frontier Bushcraft in very late 2010. We did a few private courses in 2011, and then we kind of got rolling with public courses and other things in 2012. So I've been doing my own thing for over 10 years now as well. So it's been quite the journey. And I've turned something that was a pastime and an interest into a part-time job, into a full-time job, into, you know, my own business and my own career around what I love doing. So it's been fantastic.
Because you, not that you're any different to anybody else, but you were just doing a 9 to 5 office job, weren't you, in finance?
Well, it was rarely 9 till 5, but yes.
9 to 9.
My background was I was somehow managed to do quite well at school, and I went to Edinburgh University and I did mathematics degree at Edinburgh University, and then I ended up working, as many numerate graduates do, in a financial job. And I was working. I actually tried to stay in Edinburgh, but I couldn't get a job in Edinburgh, so I really liked Edinburgh and I liked Scotland. And Edinburgh's a great city, and there's a lot of great countryside and mountains and whatnot, you know, you can easily get to. So I was quite keen to stay in, you know, I was quite outdoorsy even then. I was keen to stay in Scotland and work in Edinburgh, but I couldn't get a job in Edinburgh. And so I ended up getting a job in London. And so I was working in London and working for an asset management company. Well, I did a number of different jobs over the years, but so it was well paid. And I think if you're going to work in an office, it wasn't a bad office job to have, working with intelligent people, some of whom were, you know, a bit aggressive and unpleasant and selfish, but mostly it was nice enough people, bright people. But I just didn't want to be inside, you know, fundamentally. So when I had the opportunity to move, I did. And I'd already been thinking about it. There were a couple of things in my life that were kind of points where I kind of reconsidered, or at least thought I'm not going to be doing this forever. And so one of the things I did was actually I saved a lot of money. And if I hadn't have saved all that money when I was working, I wouldn't have been able to start my own company later on. So that was, you know, worthwhile from that perspective. But, you know, my dad retired when he was 57. He managed to take early retirement, but he had a minor stroke, a ischemic attack, a TEA, when he was 59. And I just, at that point, I was still working in an office, and when was that? It was 25 years ago, 26 years ago. But at that point, I was like, I don't want to be that guy who spends their whole life waiting to do what they want to do in their retirement. And then, you know, you don't know what's around the corner, do you? You know what's going to happen. And not that I thought my dad was, you know, made the wrong decisions, but it was just like, there are other things I want to do. I don't need to do this forever. I need an exit plan. And that was one of those kind of polarizing points in my life, you know, knowing how much my dad was looking forward to retirement and all the things that he wanted to do. He's got lots of hobbies. He's got lots of interest. He loves watercolor paints. He's an engineer. He loves old steam trains. You know, there's loads of things he's interested in. He loves his gardening. He loves walking. And I just saw how it could have been much worse as a situation. You know, he actually recovered quite well, but equally, there were some things he couldn't do afterwards. And I just thought, I don't want to wait to live my life until, you know, I'm 60, 65, you know. And I know that sounds a very kind of entitled, privileged thing, but I was just like, well, I'm going to have to make some sacrifices along the way to perhaps, but I would rather try and, you know, do something outdoors. And that's what I was heading. And I was thinking, well, you know, I was really into hiking and all sorts of things at that point. And I was like, can I travel and write magazine articles? And I love my photography. And so I was like, can I do something around, you know, backpacking and hiking and, you know, outdoorsmanship and photography and travel writing? It's like, there's something I can do there. But at the same time, I had been getting involved with going on, you know, a little bit later, I was starting to do the bushcraft courses. And I was like, I really like this as a kind of area of study. And I'd been interested in survival skills as a kid, as a teenager. My dad bought me Lofty Wiseman's Survival Handbook when I was 13 because he recognized I was interested in that kind of stuff. And so I guess I kind of came back to that area just through the lens of bushcraft. And once I was kind of got my teeth into bushcraft, I was like, yeah, okay, this is an area that I want to spend more time working on my skills and my knowledge. And it turned from an interest to a central interest to, you know, a part-time job to a full-time job. And yeah, that was, but big pay cuts and other, you know, things along the way. You know, you don't go from working in the City of London to working for an outdoor school without, you know, taking a big pay cut. But that was fine. You know, life's about a lot more than money, right? So
no, absolutely. And I think people look at you and think, how have you learned all these things? And is it all that?
Go on. No.
No, is it about just practicing, walking around? And because when I remember first meeting you all those years ago, and we were talking about tree ID, and when we walked around Hyde Park, what's this tree? I don't know nothing about trees, and I thought, what is this guy talking about? I'm not going to learn about trees. And then over the years, I've realized actually tree ID plays a big part, and whatever. But I
Mm.
still struggle, you know. It's like knots. We had a big conversation on the last course I was with Frontier about knots, and I just one of those people that just can't remember knots and stuff. But
Mm.
how what I'm trying to say is I live in central London, and I don't have woods and forests and stuff. How can I start putting these things into my day-to-day practice? As you know, I work in a hospital, Paul. I
Mhm.
don't I don't have all the chance to get out and about. So how could I put these kind of ways to think about, you know, looking at trees or whatever in a practical way?
Well, there's quite a few questions rolled into one there, and I'll do my
Hmm.
best to answer them in the order that you asked them. So,
I don't remember them.
well, I'll just make up some answers then, and you'll go, thanks for telling me. So I mean, I guess I had a head start over people. Like 80% of people in the developed world, and Britain's included in this. 80% of people, you know, broadly live in urban or suburban environments, right? So most people are in that boat. Yeah. Even if it's a smallish town in a relatively country area, right? You're still living in a town. And so a lot of people are in the same thing. Now, I was very lucky in that my parents liked the outdoors, they liked nature. As I say, my dad was a keen gardener, my mum's a keen gardener. And so I guess I grew up, I was born in Yorkshire, but then we moved to North Wales when I was 5, and we lived in the countryside. We lived on sort of the outskirts of a small village. And then that was the mid 70s, and then late 70s, early 80s. We had this thing called inflation, which we are now rediscovering,
Yeah.
and interest rates went very high, and I think mortgage rates went up to about 14%. And basically, my dad had taken a pay cut to move to Wales because they loved it there, but 5 years after they moved there, they decided they were going to have to, my dad was going to have to get a job somewhere else that paid more. They couldn't afford the mortgage on the house that they had. So we moved away from North Wales and moved back to the north of England. My dad got a job with Glaxo Wellcome. And, but we were still in the countryside, right? You know, the Glaxo Wellcome plant at Barnard Castle was originally set up because it was in the countryside. They were making penicillin there, and they needed really clean air. So that was a nice opportunity because there were good jobs there, but it was right in the countryside. And my parents moved us to a small village. There wasn't even a village shop or a village pub. It was that small. And so again, I had direct access to the countryside, and I had parents who were interested in nature. And you know, I guess I started to learn a bit about plants even as a kid. I remember eating the peas out of my dad's you know, garden plot when I was a kid, when I was like 4. And I always learned a little bit about plants, I guess, just along the way. But I think sometimes people feel like if they didn't have that start, they're never going to learn. And I think that's not true at all. I think you can learn a lot with a little bit of focus. You know, we are very fortunate as human beings that we can continue learning stuff right through our lives. You know, if you
Mhm.
look at some other animals, they kind of learn a lot when they're young in a very short period of time. And if you think about a deer following its mum around, they'll spend maybe a year and a half wandering around learning what to eat, and then that's it, that's their education done, right? So you know, and a lot of animals, I think that I might be talking out of school a little bit here, but I think, you know, even chimps, once they get over a certain age, it's much harder for them to learn things. And yeah, sure, you know, human kids are much more like sponges when they're young, but equally, you know, we can be quite focused even as adults and learn completely new skills and new areas of knowledge. And I think I do have a reasonably good memory, but I still think fundamentally you can learn as long as you're not frightened of the learning. And I think that's an important point. So I think a lot of people, like you say, are frightened of knots. Some people are frightened of mathematics. You know, some people, so when I come to start teaching navigation, sometimes I have to be a little bit conscious of some people. When you even start mentioning degrees and angles, and people kind of the blinds come down a little bit. And so there's some areas that people just do have a little bit of a predisposition to be a little bit wary of. But I think if you just focus on different areas, you can learn quite a lot. So I wouldn't discourage anybody, even in a town, trying to learn what they want to learn. But you're right, there's certain putting certain things into practice in town might be harder. But I don't think learning trees is necessarily that difficult. I don't think learning knots is that difficult, even if you're in town. In fact, that's a really good thing. You can spend, if you're on a bus or a train or whatnot every day, even if you're in a boring meeting, you can have a bit of paracord in your pocket and you can be practicing knots, and it might be a little bit rude to get your paracord out in a meeting and start tying, knots. But, if you're waiting 10 minutes at the beginning of a meeting, or you go to an appointment and you're waiting in a waiting room at a dentist or a doctor's or something, if you've got a piece of string in your pocket, you can practice, right? So there are little opportunities where you can practice, but you still need to learn that stuff in the first place, right? And that's, I think, where focused practice comes into place. I wouldn't try and learn too much in too short a period of time. And we see this all the time, right? You even see it with, doesn't have to be learning stuff, but people get keen about something, going to the gym in the new year, right? People get super keen. They're like, right, I'm going to turn over a new leaf. I'm going to do 5 days a week. I'm going to And even if they don't injure themselves, after a while, they just get bored. They go stale. They don't maintain that momentum. And it's exactly the same. Like, you could say, right, I'm going to learn 20 knots a day for the next 3 weeks. And you won't manage that. Right, you're much better off saying, right, I'm going to learn 1 knot a week for the next 3 years, because you could probably manage that, right?
Yep.
And by the end of that, you'll know 150 knots. And I can, yes, there are many more knots in the Ashley Book of Knots than 150 knots, but I can guarantee even a very, committed scoutmaster, scout leader, or anybody else within scouting probably doesn't need to know 150 knots, right? So if you can learn, 1 knot a week for the next 3 years, and that's the hard thing, saying, right, okay, it's going to take 3 years, but it's going to take 20 minutes a week maybe, and then a bit of practice afterwards. Yeah. So that's the way I would approach that. And it's the same with tree identification, right? And even if you live in a town, there's probably some trees on your street. There might be some trees around the car park where you park your car to go into the office. There might be trees around the car park where you go shopping. There might be an old railway cutting that's got trees on it. There might be like I say, a park near where you live. There might be even a botanical garden or something. Kew Gardens is close to some people in London, right? So and so there are places where you can come into contact with trees. And again, don't try and learn all of them at once. Just what I always recommend with people learning trees is just wander around and look at them, right? And that sounds silly, but if you don't know any trees whatsoever, they just look like trees, right? Yeah. And then, but the more you start looking at them, it's like, okay, well, that one's got quite light bark and it's quite smooth. That's different to those other ones over there, which got quite brown bark that's quite rough. They're about the same size, but the bark's really different. And you start noticing that they aren't just trees. There's actually some differences. It's like starting to recognize people's faces, right? When you're a baby, it's like, okay, hello, Matt. And then you start to go, oh, look at the leaves. Okay, well, this one's just like an oval. Oh, this one's sort of an oval as well. That I can't really tell the difference. Oh, this one's like a maple leaf, like on the Canada flag. Okay, so that's a maple. All right, okay. Right. Oh, this one's kind of got funny lobes on it, et cetera, et cetera. So you don't even necessarily need to know what they are. It's just recognizing that there are some differences and starting to notice those differences. And then once you start to notice the differences, and it doesn't need to take you very long. You could do that in an afternoon, right? Wandering around Hyde Park, you'd start to see, okay, there's quite a lot of these trees. I keep seeing this one over and over again.
What is it?
This one I've only seen once or twice. That's a bit different. Okay, these ones, again, there's quite a few of these, but they're different to those other ones there's quite a few of. And you'd start to be able to kind of clump them, if you see what I mean, mentally. I mean, that's not uncommon, Jeremy, even with adults, about not being able to identify birch.
Yeah, because we're not just taught in school anymore, are we? It's kind of
no, it's not. And so and a lot of adults don't know it and they don't teach their kids. So first off, I would just say, just familiarize yourself a little bit. And this could be an exercise you could do with kids, right? You know, you could say, okay, go and see if you can work out how many different types of trees there are in this, around the edge of this field, you know, around the edge of this football field.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like, okay, just, you know, see if you can. And there's ways you could do that. You could do rubbings of leaves. You could do all sorts of, you know, it's like do a rubbing of a leaf. Is that a leaf, you know, that you've seen before? Okay. If it is, then just make a little mark, and then you could go, okay, that leaf isn't one we've got a rubbing of. Well, we need to do a rubbing of that one. That's a different leaf. And then you come back and you write, okay, well, I've got 8 different leaf rubbings here. And of those 8, there's 12 of these, there's 3 of these, there's 1 of those, there's 2 of those. And again, that's a fun way of kind of, again, saying that people can't believe there's different types. Yeah, so that's a way of starting, but you're not teaching people like, this is Betula pendula, this is Ulmus glutinosa, this is Corylus avellana, this is Pinus sylvestris. You know, you're not doing that, because that gets quite boring quite quickly. Just getting people engaged with the differences and the similarities to start off with is quite fun. And then I think, particularly if you're involved in scouting, and of course you need an informed scout leader to do this, but if you can start engaging the scouts or whoever with why is this useful to know, right? And you were saying about you can't remember knots. I think one of the reasons people can't remember knots is because they try and learn them in isolation. Like, it's like, I've got to learn a clove hitch, I've got to learn a constrictor hitch, I've got to learn a reef knot, I've got to learn a fisherman's knot, I've got to learn a bowline, I've got to learn a bowline on the bite, I've got to do da. And it's like, well, that's all fine, but why do you need to know those? Like, what are they useful for? What's the difference? Because presumably it wasn't just bored sailors who made up a bunch of random knots that had no uses. Like, there are some specific uses for some of these. So if you can add context, Dave, exactly. So if you can start giving people some context and some uses for them that actually is meaningful to them, you know, like, oh, you know, start with an overhand knot. Like some people, anybody who says to me, I don't know knots, I can't remember knots, I go, okay, there's a piece of paracord, tie the simplest knot you can think of. And I would put money on the fact that, you know, most people will tie an overhand knot. Some people don't. Some people will do something very random indeed, but most people will tie an overhand knot. Okay, and then you can start building knots that are based on overhand knots, right? That's a good place to start. Okay, so you already know an overhand knot, even though you're telling me you don't know knots. Okay, let's double it over and do the same thing again. Okay, we've got an overhand loop. Okay, you know, okay, we can do an overhand knot, but what if we don't go through that way? What if we keep going around and go through from the other side? Okay, we've got a figure of 8, you know. Okay, what if we double it over and do that? Well, we've got a figure of 8 that's a loop now, you know. So you can start building them up from building blocks. Even the jam knot is just a bunch of overhand knots, right? You know, so it's like, okay, you do an overhand knot, you do a slippery overhand knot, then you've got 2 knots with a stopper on the end. You can tie that around something. You can cinch your thermarest up with that, you know, and tie it off. That's, you know, good for carry mats as well. You can tie a fishing line to a fishing reel before you reel it on with that knot, but then you can do other things with it and it turns it into a jam knot as well. But it's all just stacked overhand knots. So if you put some structure around how you categorize them as well, then people will start to not just understand the uses of them, but then you can also say, well, there's a family of knots. It's like Italian hitch, clove hitch, constrictor hitch are all very, very similar. And that can be confusing because if you try and teach too many things all together that are similar, people get confused. But if you can try and get people to see knots in families of knots, at least the basic knots, then it's easier to remember them all in that family. So I find that useful as well. And that's something you can do in your living room, right? If you want to, you can practice and learn. Having some guidance is helpful. Going out and seeing what trees you have locally. It doesn't matter if they're the most important trees ever in the whole world or in the country or whatever, but just go and get familiar with what's local to you. Get a Collins guide like this. This one, this one's good. Yeah. The Collins Tree Guide. There's a lot in there, but I think it's well laid out. The problem with the tiny little books, I don't know if I've got any, you know, like the little gem books, is there's so much that's not in them that if you don't have any idea where to look, and particularly if you're in town, I mean, it can be more complex in town, because you're going to come across things that you won't find in the countryside because they've been planted there. Yeah, you're going to find, sweet gums and false acacias and all sorts of weird stuff in town that you won't find just out in the British countryside. If you go out in the British countryside, you probably find 20 trees at most in pretty much any way that you go, unless there's been a load of weird stuff planted, silver birch and alder and hazel, Scots pine and a few of the bits and pieces you're going to find in lots of places, the occasional yew tree, different willows, etc., etc. But you're not going to come across loads of random introduced species. But you go to Hyde Park, or particularly going somewhere like Kew Gardens, you're going to find a lot more. But the advantage of going somewhere like Kew Gardens, and this is the next thing I was going to say, is, and if you've got the opportunity to go somewhere like Kew Gardens or Bodnant or any of these places around the country, they've all got labels on them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
it's really helpful when you're trying to work out what they are. So
that's it.
Yeah. So you use what you can find, right, in terms of resources.
What about the plant? The app, I think it's PlantNet app. I think it is. You take a photo and upload, and
oh yeah. I haven't used that myself. I've heard some people find those quite useful.
Yeah,
but I haven't used them personally, so I'm not in a position to say whether they're super useful or not.
Nice. Right, let's ask you another quiz about navigation. One of my things with teaching the Scout sport, exactly what you were talking about, was context, and not just here's a map, read it, but try and make it a bit more fun as well. And one of the ways I've been teaching my Scouts is using a coordinate map, but making it in a bit of a fun way. All the guests before have been talking about tea. How like the tea. I know you're not a tea, but you're a coffee drinker, aren't you?
I don't mind tea, but yeah, I prefer coffee. Yeah, in the morning.
Just go with this one, because it's going to mess it all up, right?
Okay, sorry, coffee, right? Yes, I love coffee. I hate tea. Right.
So, how do you like your tea using this map? Your coffee, sorry.
It would be F6 if we're going that way, or 6F, however you want to do it.
Yeah. So no milk at all.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
That's cool. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, you like that one. What about this one then? Favorite cartoon character?
That's hard. Oh God, you've got.
I think I've worked your one out.
I used to like Morph quite a lot.
That's exactly what I was going to guess.
I used to like Tony Hart's show when I was younger, but if I had to choose only one of them to ever watch again, if that was, I would say it has to be B1.
Bit of Wallace
and Gromit. Yeah.
Nice. So nice, this is one of the things. Say again.
Nice bit of cheese.
No, you have to do nice cheese. But this is what we were talking about at Scouts, is just trying to learn in a different fun way, isn't it? And I've made a whole load of random ones of those,
They're good. I like those. I might steal that idea.
Yeah. Credit. I probably nicked it to someone else. I don't know.
It's a good idea.
And yeah, it's just trying to make fun ways. We do human battleships and all sorts of stuff like that. Let's see. There's some comments coming in. People are talking about all their PlantNet and Seek won't really work if you're learning.
Okay, that's good to know, Jeremy.
Yeah, absolutely, David. And this is what we were talking about earlier on a few weeks ago, about just making coordinates fun rather than just reading a map. And like Paul was saying, just try and learn in a fun way, and rather than just. And that's the thing probably about knots. When I was joined Scouts, and you think I have to learn knots, so like you said, I just learned knots or learned them but not use them into practice.
Yeah.
And then years later, I'm like, oh God, how do I do that one?
Yeah. Well, I think that I have spent and continue to spend a lot of time working with and doing stuff with Ray Goodwin. And, Ray is renowned as a canoe coach and a canoe leader. And having done some pretty outrageous things in his time, like circumnavigating Wales in a canoe, first unsupported crossing of the Irish Sea in a canoe, which is pretty ballsy, and a lot of other stuff as well. And He's a very good educator. He trained as a teacher. But before he got into canoeing, he was really a climber, and he was very interested in rock climbing, and he went through all the mountaineering certifications and things. And so he has an MIC, which is the sort of really high level mountaineering instruction qualification. Oh, wow. Okay. You are quick off the mark there, Mr. Goodwin. He's very good at knots. He's very good at climbing knots, and he's got lots of interesting ways of tying them, with one hand and all sorts of things, and making sure that you don't tie bowlines incorrectly, and all these things that he learned as someone coming up through climbing in a certain era. And even he will say, if I show him a knot that he doesn't know, or a way of tying a knot that he doesn't know, and remember, there are many ways of tying the same knot in some cases, in the case of some knots, he has to do it repeatedly to learn it. And what he will do is he'll do it enough that it's in his short-term memory. So you go, show me again, right? Okay, I'll try and do it. Yeah, okay, show me again, and he'll get it. He'll get his hands doing the right thing. And I do. It's interesting because I do exactly the same. Like, someone shows me a knot, I ask them to show me a few times, and I say, okay, let me see if I could do it, and then they'll iterate. But it's only in your short-term memory, and you'll forget it pretty quickly at that point. So what you then need to do is find a reason to tie it. Right. Much as possible. And yes, that can be sitting on the bus and tying it under the table at a meeting at work or what have you. But if you can find reasons, even if you've got other knots that will do the job that you want to use that knot for, if you can just say, okay, well, I'm always going to attach my ridge line of my tarp with this knot for the next 6 months, because then I won't forget it. If it's suitable for that, I'm going to make a loop with this knot, or I'm going to attach the painter to my canoe with this knot. Then you then find a reason to make it your own, and after a while you won't forget how to tie it. And you can go back to tying a knot that you prefer for that job perhaps, but equally, because you've tied that a lot, you won't have forgotten how to tie it. So
memory.
You have to take it from short-term memory into long-term memory, and you need to have uses for it. If it's just some abstract piece of information that you've only committed to short-term memory, you won't remember it very long. And even if you do manage to sort of get it into long-term memory without the context and without the uses, your brain just goes, there's this useless information cluttering.
Yeah, get rid of it.
Get rid of it. Yeah.
There's a great video of Ray Goodwin and Ray Mears. They're on some canoe trip, and Ray Mears teaching Goodwin the bow drill. Have you seen that one?
I have. I've paddled that river as well, and it's in Canada. Yeah.
And Goodwin's just trying to try it and 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 try it, and you can see the sweat pouring off him, guys.
Yeah, that was on the Missinaibi River. It was on the episode where they went down part of the Missinaibi River, and yeah, they had some downtime in camp, and that was something that Ray Goodwin had wanted to do. And so yeah, and it shows how stubborn he is. I think that even though it's edited down for a BBC show, it shows how stubborn he is, and he is stubborn, and he will work at things. And that gets you over those learning humps, though, right? If you just put enough energy into something sometimes to get over the difficulty, then you're on the other side of it, and that's you've broken the back of the difficulty then. And you can see him do that. But I know he's stubborn. I've worked with him for a long time, but it's good, when you're doing trips in wilderness areas, and we've paddled that river a few times with students, with clients, and we've done a lot more of that river than they travel to film. And I think the thing with filming, anybody who does a lot of YouTube videoing will probably understand this in a way that maybe TV viewers didn't 20 years ago, that trying to journey and do a lot of filming at the same time is very difficult, because you've got to set the shots up, you've got to do a number of shots, you've got to do landscape, you've got to, all those shots you see of people on YouTube of like, getting up in the morning. It's like, well, they've already had to get up to put the camera over there, and then they've got to get back into bed, and then they've got to protect, all of that stuff. Whether or not you've got a cameraman with you, it takes a long time. So yeah, they traveled a bit of that river, but we've traveled a good length of that river a few times. We're doing it again this September. Actually, it's a fantastic area. there's some very good bow drill woods down there as well. Eastern white cedar. There's a lot of that down there. Beautiful cedar trees. That works very well.
Awesome.
But he is stubborn, and I've journeyed with him a lot. And when the conditions get tough, it's good to have people on your team who are just stubborn, who will push through it. And Ray's one of those people. He's a great guy to work with. I've learned a lot from him, both in terms of the paddling, but a lot that goes around expeditioning, and also just those little things about, observing, someone you'd think is very good at knots, and he is, but just observing how he will learn a knot, even as an experienced, user of knots. It's quite interesting to see how he onboards information even now.
Awesome. Yeah. Right, man. We got 20 minutes.
Okay.
We've got some questions coming in. Dave's asking, if you had to recommend a single book to a young person, what would you go with?
Single book. What other than Baden-Powell's scouting manual? Just trying to think. I would say, I'm just trying to look. Some of Grey Owl stuff is worth reading, because it's more, there's all these manuals you could recommend, like Ernest Thompson Seton's, Book of Woodcraft and stuff. And I would recommend that if you can get hold of a copy that doesn't cost a fortune as a sort of vintage book. But yeah, some of Grey Owl stories I think are worth reading, for young people who are interested in being in the woods and being out there. They're very good. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, you want some inspirational stuff rather than just the practical stuff as well. Yeah.
Yep. Next one. What's your favorite Firesteel?
The ones that I have typically used for years, the Swedish Firesteel, the one that came under the Light My Fire brand. I've used those for many years, as well as Strike Fire, which is a British brand, and I like they're a similar hardness, and I like that hardness of steel. They're a bit harder than some of them. There is another brand that I'm trying to remember the name of it. I actually bought one, but I can't remember. There was another one that someone recommended to me, and I ordered one, and that's pretty good as well, but I can't remember. But the ones I have used, Strike Fire and Light My Fire Firesteels for years, and I go through them, right? And I've got them kind of secreted in kits and boots of cars, and I've got quite a few kicking around, and I do wear through them because I have a technique where I push a lot of material off the end for dropping big sparks into particular spots, so I tend to wear through them. I don't think I get 10,000 strikes out of a full size Firesteel, but I do still get hundreds, if not thousands. Yeah.
Awesome. I haven't got the link, but Paul's YouTube video about how to use a Firesteel.
Yeah, pushing a big, I think it's called something like how to generate a big spark with your Swedish Firesteel. It's something like that. It's an old video, but it's still valid. Yeah.
It's all good. What happens on the river stays on the river. Absolutely.
Indeed, Helen. Yes.
Leo's asking, would you tend to teach bushcraft to adults, scouts, schools, or all?
It tends to be adults, Leo.
Leo's a young person, by the way.
Okay. Yeah. It tends to be adults. Although I do get young people coming with their parents as well. I used to run some courses for just young people, but
it's too much stress.
It's not even that. It's just that, there's so many other ways that people can have their, children exposed to those skills. It's hard to compete, as a kind of bushcraft school provider. It's hard. And so what I realized quite some time ago was that I think I'm most useful if I can teach people like Mark and, his colleagues, and people like, many of the scout leaders who've been on courses with me, and then they can take those skills and use them in the most appropriate way for their troops, as it were. So I think that's where my place is. And I guess I also have a tendency to teach in quite a technical way. And I think it's probably adults who generally are most receptive to that. But I like teaching anybody who's interested in listening. So that's who I teach. Teach people who are interested in listening what I've got to say.
I'm not saying nothing. Right. Good question, Michael. Is there anything in bushcraft that you still want to achieve?
Oh, loads. Yeah, I mean, I think anybody that's good in this area suffers massively from imposter syndrome. I think, and if they don't, they're a psychopath. No, I genuinely mean that, because you get so far into this term, this bubble of knowledge that's known as bushcraft generally, and there is so much. We just talked about trees, okay? Just tree identification, uses of trees, just the knowledge of what you can use them for, and then being able to do that with them using, axes and saws and knives and things, whether all of those different uses, cordage and carving, and just, I won't even go down that rabbit hole too much, but there's just so much different, and there are some generic uses of wood, like most of it will burn if it's dry, right? But there are some very specific uses of specific species and using them in different ways, and they, there are different species in different geographies, and that's just a huge subject in itself, right? Then there's plants, and plants are harder than trees because there's more of them, and some of them look more similar. And then fungi are harder than plants and harder than trees, and that's just when we're talking about food, with the fungi in particular, but there's medicinal uses as well. And then you've got trapping, tracking feeds into that. Tracking is a whole world of skill and knowledge in itself. Animal behavior, the observation that you need, the observation skills and the practice. It's a very perishable skill.
Do you enjoy that, Paul?
I do enjoy it. I really enjoy it. Yeah. It's absolutely fantastic skill set. Then there's, tracking, fishing, navigation, natural navigation. There's just, there's just so much, tanning, flint napping, So my specialism is not primitive technology. So I've done a bit of flint napping. I've done a bit of hide tanning. I haven't done lots. I know some people who are absolutely fantastic at those things. I know people who are real experts. I would like to learn more about those things. And then I think for me, like, I'm very familiar with trees and plants and bushcraft uses and all of the things I've just talked about in the UK. I've traveled a lot in North America, wilderness trips and whatnot. Thank you, Max. But then, like, I've got family in Australia, and I started going to Australia more in about 2009. And I've been back quite a few times since then, to the extent now where we're, I'm looking at partnering up with somebody there to run some courses down there. But, you can be pretty skillful with your local trees and plants in, Northwestern Europe or, central Canada or what have you. And then you go to Australia and all the trees and plants are different. And so, there's always more to learn, so I went there as pretty skillful and knowledgeable in my own woods, as it were. But then I go there and it's like, okay, well, there's 700 species of eucalyptus, eucalyptus, including wattles, iron barks and gum trees and wattles and that bunch, which you don't really get anywhere else, right? And some of them have got generic uses, but some have got very specific uses. And then, there's a whole bunch of different wild edibles, and there's a whole bunch of learning there. So there's always more to learn. So I'm in answering Michael's question, I'm resisting saying one specific thing because there's always a ton more to learn. And I'm enjoying going to places where the trees and plants are different and applying the same skills, relearning those skills through the lens of different materials, and that's really interesting. Yeah.
You actually just seen Jeremy's comment about you should get friendly with Tristan Gooley.
I am friendly with Tristan Gooley.
Absolutely. And you did a podcast.
I've done about 4 podcasts with Tristan. I've got one recorded that hasn't been put out yet, actually, about his weather book that came out last year. So,
absolutely.
But he's a great guy. I really enjoy talking to Tristan. Yeah.
What skill did you enjoy learning the most? Oh my God, we've only got 11 minutes. And we haven't even started the subject that we agreed to talk about tonight.
What did we talk about? Oh, the GBS, right? We did say we were going to talk about that, didn't we? I'd forgotten. So,
that's all right.
I think as a that's a really difficult question to answer, Dave, but it's a good question. I think if I had to isolate one thing, it would be around canoeing, and that might sound a bit odd in the context of sort of bushcraft, but for me, I mentioned earlier that I'd been really into hiking and backpacking when I was younger, and I was very happy wild camping. Even before this term wild camping became very popular recently, I was very happy just to go and set up a tent or a tarp or what have you and camp, and very happy on the land. My navigation skills have been quite good since a young age, happy to just roam. And the side of the landscape which I didn't really know was the water. I'd swum a bit and I'd done a little bit of paddling at school, on outward bound kind of weeks away with school and whatnot, but it wasn't something I was regularly involved in. If I planned a journey, it was always hiking or whatnot. And so when I got into canoeing, it kind of joined the dots. It kind of completed the jigsaw puzzle in terms of seeing the landscape from the perspective of being on the water rather than just being on the land. And rather than say coming to a lake, having walked through the hills and the woods and camping by the side of a lake, knowing where you are on the land, but this water beyond, being mysterious, I was having these experiences where, I'm paddling along the water, I've got a map, I'm navigating along the lake or a river system, whatever. And then you come to a piece of land that you've never set foot on, and you land, you make camp, and you explore inwards from there, perhaps a little bit. And it's just a different side of the same coin, but somehow it just connected a whole area of landscape that I wasn't really spending a lot of time thinking about. And then just the pleasure of, twiddling the paddle and doing a J stroke and controlling the boat and being able to go wherever you want. Then I think that was, for me, it fits so well with the bushcraft skill set as well, campcraft and firelighting and axemanship and all of those things. Red canoes definitely go faster, Malcolm. Yeah.
Is that a joke, Paul? Something like that? Is it?
I'm sure Malcolm and I have got plenty of in jokes that we could spend the next 10 minutes going back and forth with. But yeah, red canoes definitely go faster. They look better in photographs as well. If you take a photograph of a lovely green and blue wilderness, if it's got a red canoe in it, then absolutely. Dunning-Kruger, yes. The Mount Idiot, or whatever I called it, Mount Stupid, in my GBS 2019 talk. Matt's just put Dunning-Kruger. So yeah, people not knowing that they don't know things, and knowing a little bit and thinking they know a lot. That's the Dunning-Kruger effect, basically.
And we use that a lot in the hospital as well, actually. Just people think they have particular patients as well, they have a little bit of knowledge, they've read it on Google, but in reality, it's more dangerous than having no
because they don't know what they don't know. They don't know, and it's a little bit like that with wild food sometimes. Particularly when things look very similar, you've got edible things that look very similar to poisonous plants or fungi, what have you. That's the real danger area, because if you don't know there's a poisonous lookalike, you leave yourself open to making that mistake and not even realizing you've made that mistake. So just knowing the existence of things, even if you don't know them, is actually useful. Yeah.
Can you answer this question in under 1 minute?
Where should an explorer start for learning bushcraft? Read Morse Kahansky's bushcraft book.
That was less than that. No, you've got a bit more. You've got to pad it out now. I said 45.
Then read Ray Mears' Essential Bushcraft, but read Kahansky's book first.
One question I was asked during the week, is there going to be a new Paul Kirtley book 2?
Possibly. Yeah.
How long did it take you to write this book?
The short answer is probably about 2 years, on and off. Yeah. The longer answer is probably more like 15.
Yeah.
Because that's a slightly more obtuse answer, because I wouldn't have been able to put that book together in the time that we put it together if I hadn't have been working on that skill set, and in particular taking photos along the way on trips, winter trips, summer trips, courses I was teaching students. I just wouldn't have had the photographs to go in the book. So had I tried to write that book 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to. Yeah,
good question. Right, I need to just click this button, and that will change the logo.
Oh, that's clever. You are like the techno master with this,
mate.
Stuff.
You're going to be talking to me offline after this, and I'm not going to tell you my secrets. All right, let's make that just a little bit bigger. Paul, you need to kind of move that. Can you shuffle that other way? We can't
What am I
see that
trying to
much.
shuffle?
Your face.
Shuffle my face.
Oh no, the other way.
Hello.
Oh, there we are. There we are.
No. Who put that in the way?
How rude. How rude.
I know. It's like,
Just briefly for the 10 seconds, just tell us what this logo is and then I'll take it down.
okay. So Global Bushcraft Symposium, or GBS, because I will get bored with saying Global Bushcraft Symposium. The GBS is a conference, a symposium that is occurring in the UK at the end of July this year, July 27th to the 31st. It is a coming together of experts in bushcraft, survival, wilderness living skills, primitive technology, experimental archaeology, and a whole bunch of other things as speakers and demonstrators, with a limited number of delegates who can be there as well. And just to share as much knowledge as possible, not just about the skill sets, but also about how to share those skill sets with our students, wherever they are, whether, you know, there's people from universities, there's people from bushcraft schools, there's scout leaders, there's forest school leaders, there are military survival instructors, and it's people who are interested in sharing these skills with other people and upping their knowledge of those skills that this is aimed at. And this follows on from the GBS in 2019, which I mentioned briefly. I was a speaker at the GBS 2019. That was in Alberta in Canada. I was invited to be a keynote speaker there. And during that event, I was invited to consider hosting one of these in the UK, because of course the UK has got a very rich heritage in bushcraft, and scouting is obviously related to that. If you think about the scouting movement in North America, if you think about Ernest Thompson Seton, influence on Baden-Powell, if you think about Frederick Russell Burnham and his influence on Baden-Powell in the Boer War, and then Baden-Powell coming back and writing a scouting manual, and then writing Scouting for Boys, all of this stuff is closely interlinked. You know, this expeditionary skill set, a lot of which goes under the umbrella of bushcraft now, was integral in feeding back into scouting in the UK. So there's all of this stuff sits together like a jigsaw puzzle. And yeah, we're just really looking to bring together people and not do it in a superficial way. You know, there's a lot of great shows and gatherings and stuff around the country, and we're not trying to compete with any of that. It's not a commercial venture. We're not trying to make any money out of it. Lisa Fenton is my co-chair. So when I was asked if I would chair it, I thought about it, and then I spoke to Lisa, who was another keynote speaker in 2019, and I said, Lisa, they've asked me to consider doing this. Would you consider coming on board as a co-chair, as a partner on this to help? You know, we've got somewhat different networks. She now works in academia. I work in, you know, field practice. The two go together very well. Let's join forces and make a really good job of this. And so after some consideration, we went back and said, yeah, we'll do it. And here we are. Now, originally it should have been 2 years after the previous one, but COVID happened, as we all know. Don't need to say any more about that. So in 2020, we made the decision to postpone it until 2022. And we had the dates out early 21, and we've been slowly chipping away at it. It's an outdoor centre in North Wales, right by Llyn Tegid, Bala Lake. It's a lovely spot. And we've got people coming from the States. So we've got people like David Westcott coming from the States, and various other good teachers coming from the States. We've got people coming from Canada. We've got some of the Swedes coming. We've got people coming from Australia. We've got people coming from all over the UK, and some other places I've probably forgotten to mention as well, France, etc. But we've got an international lineup of speakers and demonstrators, and it's open to anybody who has, you know, an interest in these areas and coming to speak to some absolutely fantastic people. Just go to the GBS website, if Mark can put the link up, and look at the list of speakers, and that'll give you a good indication. And they're not all of the people we're speaking to about being speakers are not listed on there yet, but a lot of them are. So it's a great opportunity. Some of these people don't come this side of the Atlantic very often, and it'd be a really good opportunity to hear from them. Yeah.
But it is expensive though.
So people keep saying, right? So, and I actually am minded to
There
put
we are.
out a post about this. Yeah. Global Bushcraft Symposium. There's plenty of people who've bought tickets already and clearly don't think it's expensive, right? If you want to come and do a 6-day course with me in the woods, right? And it's just me babbling on for a week, right? With, and showing
You
what
don't
I'm
babble, Paul. You don't babble.
a little bit, right? In my own inimitable way, right? But it's me and Matt and Henry and James, those type of people. There's a few of us who, will be running the course, and we've got our things that we know that we want to share. 6-day course, elementary bushcraft course, £700 including VAT, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, of course, we're trying to make a bit of money out of that because we need to pay people's wages, and it needs to be some money left over so that we can do it again next year, and then we don't go bankrupt. But the point is, in terms of what you pay, and it's not just, I'm not massively expensive. Look at Ray Mears courses, they're more expensive than mine. You look at Bear Grylls Survival Academy, they're more expensive. If you look at a lot of bushcraft schools around the UK, I'm very much in the ballpark in terms of what I charge. The costs of putting this event on come to about just under £500 per person, like in terms of the people who are going to be there. There's only going to be 250 people there, including the speakers, right?
Mm-hmm.
The costs come to 400 and something pounds per person. We're paying for the speakers to be there. We're not paying them wages, but we need to put them up and feed them and get them there. And so there's about 200 tickets available to sell, and we've got to charge VAT on top. Yep. So 400 and something goes to 500 plus VAT makes it 600. That's what it costs. Like I can't.
And you've got that vast amount of different people talking all around the world, isn't it? Yeah, like you say, you'd pay £500-600 for a week, and you just get Paul Kirtley and maybe 2 instructors. Whereas
you got 4 days of
yep.
Dave Westcott, Dave Holiday, Dan Baird. You've got people. You've got Johan Skulman. I was talking today. You've got Matthias Norberg. You've got experts in outdoor education as well as experts in Ray Goodwin, Chris Easterbrook. You've got Professor Linda Hercombe. You've got Teresa Emmerich Camper. You've got Timon coming from the Netherlands. I forgot to mention the Netherlands. You've got Timon coming from the Netherlands. You've got Sigurd coming from the Netherlands. There's just so many good quality people going to be there.
Am I right? I read on the website that they're being videoed and you will be able to watch them afterwards.
Not for free, you won't. But if you're a delegate, you get all the videos for free.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
One more person you haven't met, it's Terry.
Terry's going to be there running the youth engagement camp, which we're absolutely honoured to have as well. So we've got 5. I mean, we should have talked about this for an hour, but we've got 5. We've got 5 camps, theme camps. And Terry is heading up the youth engagement camp, but we've also got people like Paul Mosley who are going to be involved in that, who was one of the lead trainers for forest schools for many years. We've got Dave Watson doing the fire camp. Timon's a legend, absolutely. He's going to be over with some of his people. It's just going to be absolutely amazing. And I'm, I know I'm gushing about it, but it's just like having experienced what we experienced in 2019, if it can be as good as that, I'll be very happy. Hopefully it's going to be even better, and that's no disrespect to the guys who organized 2019, but we've made this all inclusive with accommodation and food and everything. There's no like paying 95 quid to have vol-au-vents with Ray Mears or any of that rubbish. It's just like turn up and you pay your ticket price and you are there for 4 days, rubbing shoulders, having dinner with me or Dave Westcott or Timon or
and it's access all areas, Paul. Yeah, so people can go to every single presentation.
Apart from maybe each other's bedrooms, but
that's extra cost.
I'm keeping my door locked. No, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's it's not like us and them. It's there are not branded different companies trying to sell you gear there, although that's an attraction to some people, but that we're not trying to do that. There's already places that do that. It's about the skill sets and the knowledge bases. And Ray Goodwin's going to be doing canoe sessions on the lake. There's just loads of good stuff to get involved in, and it's access, as you say, it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it isn't just like you plebs go over there. These are the really important speakers over here. It's just everyone's all in the same space all the time, and so you can go and sit down at a table with whoever you want. If there's a chair there, and sit down and talk to me. You can sit down and talk to Timon. You can sit down and talk to Dave Westcott. You can sit down, talk to Teresa, Rupert Brown, Adam Logan, Dave Watson, Terry Longhurst, all of these people. And we're all going to be talking to each other as well. It's such a good opportunity to, I hate the word network, but it's a good way to network as well and build relationships with people, partnerships, share information. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And I mean, people are struggling with the price a little bit conceptually, because people are used to paying for a day at the Bushcraft show or something, and this isn't that. This is not that. Yeah.
So there's no trade shows or anything like that. This is just
no
presentations
trade,
and
so
hands-on.
We're not making money off traders paying for stalls, right?
Yep.
You know, when you go to something like the Bushcraft show, yeah, your ticket price is subsidized by, you know, renting out stall space to burger vans and stuff. We're not doing that. It's just like it's the stuff we're sharing. There's going to be 3 presentation spaces indoors. There's going to be 5 theme camps outdoors. It's going to be 4 days from the Wednesday night to the Sunday afternoon. And yeah, it will be exhausting.
It's going to be exhausting for you and Lisa, isn't it? Much of a headache, isn't it?
Well, it's exhausting. This is the exhausting time for me at the moment. We're getting to the point where we should be.
And we spoke about it earlier on, Paul, but anyone who has an interest in the outdoors can go, yeah? It's not, you don't have to be a professional instructor or anything like that.
Not at all. And I would say, I think your average scout leader who's interested in woodcraft and camping and bush skills is going to, you know, get a lot out of it. And I know the other thing as well is, I know, and I'll be blunt here, is I know a lot of scout leaders, they give their time for free, they volunteer, and a lot of the training that they get is also for free. And that's the way that scouting is set up, and I applaud that. And so I know it can be difficult to understand why you need to pay for training, but it's just another opportunity to learn. And as I say, we aren't trying to make a profit out of this. We are literally just passing the costs on of organizing it. You know, I've been organizing it for 3 years. I will make no money out of this whatsoever. I won't get paid a wage. And we're doing it because we love the subject, and we love, you know, you couldn't bring all these people together. Even my bushcraft school, I could not get 40 instructors from around the world to come and teach an amazing course. I don't have the leverage to do that. Lisa couldn't get 40 people to come to the university she teaches at to run a bespoke thing. But together we can put this, you know, on, you know, collectively, you know, people are willing to come and give their time for free. Nobody's taking a speaker fee. Nobody's taking a wage. The only people who are taking a wage are the accountants, right? Who are, you know, you have to pay for to do the bookkeeping and file the VAT returns and things. But other than that, you know, nobody involved is getting, you know, is making money off it. So
if you're a scout leader,
I'm saying that because I've seen a few things on social media in recent days that are questioning where's all the money going, and I'm actually just going to write a simple P&L. It's not complicated. The venue costs 235 quid per person, and that's including the speakers, and that money has to come out of ticket prices that we sell, because speakers are being looked after because they're speaking. So it's £235 per person. We're getting charged from the venue. There's a couple of other costs like the hog roast. So it's about £250 per person just in terms of accommodation and food. There's a goodie bag, the delegate bag that needs to be paid for. The AV stuff that's getting, you know, projectors, screens, PAs, laptops for presenters to put their presentations on. That's all costing about 10 and a bit grand for 3 spaces. And then we've got a professional film crew coming in to film it. That's costing the best part of 10 grand as well. And then we need to help subsidize some of the people, particularly transatlantic flights. As I say, it comes to about nearly £500 per person for the tickets we're selling, and we have to charge VAT. And unless you've got a line into Rishi Sunak to complain about VAT being 20%, there's nothing I can do about that bit either. So that's how we get to 599. And I know there are some people through Bush Scout, I've seen the list of people who've bought tickets already. I know some of those names, and it's not Terry who's involved in sort of more from an organizational point of view. People who have bought tickets in the last few days, I know are scout leaders. So I definitely,
And
I'm seeing that coming through. So
if you're a scout leader, this isn't, Paul's has no idea what I'm about to say, but if you are a scout leader, contact your district or county and ask for a hardship fund grant, and just say, this is continuing my CPD. We need to continue my training, my learning skills. And as Paul said, I have 40 world-renowned speakers going to be there, and we're going to have practical skills, and we're going to learn a whole load of things. So ask your district and your county for a hardship fund. Amazing to pay the £600, but even if it's just a couple of £100, and I guarantee you should get something for that, for your hardship fund.
And if anybody here is an instructor that instructs through their own company and you pay VAT, you can claim the VAT back, right? So
cool.
Yeah.
Last look at that. We're always over. So we'll round this up in 5 minutes, if that's okay with you, Paul.
That's
Last
fine.
question about the GBS. Will there be day tickets available?
That's not the plan at the moment, Michael.
Okay, answered that one. And it will count as a good chunk of one. Absolutely, Dave. It is definitely ongoing learning, not just as a scout leader, but bushcraft instructors. And if you're a forest school teacher, yeah, there's a whole lot of things, isn't there?
I was just talking to Johan Skulman today, who was a survival instructor with the Swedish military. He's was responsible for research and development on clothing for Swedish military. He was involved with Fjärraven for many years. Many of you'll know him through Fjärraven and Hestra and Mora. He has his own company now, Garfitten. Fantastic expert on outdoor clothing. He is coming to speak. I had a chat with him today about what he's speaking about and some of the practical sessions he might do. I mean, any one of these conversations I'm having with people like David Westcott, and if you don't know who David Westcott is, go and Google him. These conversations are going to be, they're getting me really excited, and their presentations are going to be super, super interesting. I'm excited. Like, I know quite a lot about some of these subject areas as a whole, as we've just been discussing. But I am super excited about what's going to be shared at this event. It's going to be next level stuff. It's going to be really good. Some real deep thinking and detailed experience from some amazing people that you don't normally get access to in the UK.
Lovely. And just, you've mentioned all these names, but just one name you haven't mentioned. Sorry, just need to have a drink, Paul. One other name.
Mark Yates.
Yeah, of course. I'll be there as well.
Mark will be there. Mark is going to be doing some comparing on the stage, and he's good at that job. And so, in keeping with the event, we are finding people who are good at doing particular roles, and we are having them do it. Yeah.
I'm worried about one role you've asked me to do, Paul.
What's that?
That's the raffle. Did I tell you about the last raffle I did?
No. Should I be worried now?
Yeah. So
there's going to be more than one raffle. It's not just
right.
a raffle. There are going to be a number of raffles.
All right. Well, I'll tell you this
which you have full exposure to if you are a ticket holder.
So when I was working on one of the stations, London stations, I'm not going to mention which one, I was asked to go to a charity event and host it and run this raffle. But I had a few of the things, and I basically I messed up. I forgot. Was that £5? Was that 10? And it got to a couple of thousand, and I completely messed the whole thing up on raffle. So
was that an auction or a raffle?
Oh yeah, maybe. Yeah, you're right. All right, shut up, Mark.
It was an auction. Was it an auction with people bidding?
It was an auction. Yeah, it was.
Okay, so we'll stay away from that then. We'll stay away from that. As long as you can read the numbers.
Just. Right. We are well and truly over time, Paul. People are just asking.
Who says we have to only go for an hour? Who says? Whose rules are those, Mark?
Well, there's no rules. That was the WhatsApp message. How long is it going to be? 1 hour? Knowing it's never going to be 1 hour. It's never going to be 1 hour. But we can talk. I'm not. No wonder that. Yeah. Shut up, Dave. We can talk for hours. Yeah, if you want to get in touch with Paul, paulkirtley.co.uk, that's where all your blogs, all your videos are. And if you want to send Paul a message, then
podcasts, yeah, all there,
that
and
was
all
a
all the social media stuff is.
There was another question. Any more podcasts? Nothing really about. Yeah, Paul's always got podcasts.
Well, I haven't put any out for a while. I mean, I think I read something from an instructor that I really respect today, and there are many that I really respect. Stephen Lassay, I saw a post from him earlier today saying how, you know, he'd been finding it hard, and this is something that resonated with me, finding it hard to be creative and share lots of stuff on social media through the last couple of years, and it has been. I think when you're out and about and being, excited about what you're doing and running courses and visiting, Bush Scout moots and going to, bushcraft shows and Great Outdoors Festival and all these sorts of things, and seeing people that there's an energy to all of that. And we've not really had that energy much in the last couple of years, and I've certainly found it hard to produce material. And there's been no opportunity really to sit down with people and talk face to face, which is the way I really like doing podcasts. I've done plenty over Skype, but sitting down face to face has a different dynamic to it. Like that the chat I had with Mors Kahansky at the GBS in 2019 was, a rare opportunity to sit down with Mors and talk in that way. And I'm glad I managed to capture that, because he died later that year, and he was just such a gem of an individual, such a giving guy. So I love doing those. So it has been quite hard to keep going at the same rate. And then of course we've had all the uncertainty of COVID and running our businesses through that over the past couple of years. But I do have at least 5 or 6 podcasts that are recorded that are in the pipeline, and I have been starting to edit those up recently. So you will start to see more podcasts coming out again. I've got one with Dave Holder, who's the main survival consultant on the Alone show. He's a fantastic guy. Unfortunately, he's not coming to the GBS. We were talking about it, but he's got too many TV show commitments. He's working on 3 different shows at the moment. And that's the chat with Mors there, which was a fantastic conversation. I've got one with Tristan Gooley that's in the bag, and I've got a number of others as well, which I won't announce yet, but there's some good ones coming as well. So yeah, I am back on that horse, but I didn't want to just start releasing them willy-nilly. I wanted to make sure I had a few. Yeah, there are, Ange, absolutely. Yeah, we've got some great people coming to the GBS, like Kat Bigney. We've got Lisa Fenton, of course. We've got Teresa Emmerich Camper. We've got Linda Hercombe coming, and hopefully a number of others as well, who are absolutely fantastic. And there are a number of others that we've tried to get there, as with guys, but not everyone's available. But yeah, we have really tried to bring in some of the best women as well. So.
Right, I'm going to ask you a controversial question, Paul.
Okay.
I love it. Let's put you on the spot. Can I ask, Paul, when was the last time you spoke to your mentor, Ray Mears?
Well, he was my mentor in a lot of ways. Although Juha Rankinen was as much of a mentor. He was somebody who worked at Woodlaw and had worked there for a long time. And if you know what Juha looks like, you'll see him in some of the pictures in Ray Mears' Bushcraft book, for example. And then there's people like Lars Falt as well, who I worked with in Sweden. So these people have always all been influential directly. And then, but the last time I spoke to Ray was probably about 10 years ago. And he doesn't like being in touch with people who used to work for him. And I don't know why. It's not me specifically. Juha's another one. Lisa Fenton is another one. John Ryder, Ben McNutt, Dan Hume, James Bath. None of us hear from him. So it's just the way he seems to operate. So
it's what it is, isn't it? It's what it is.
And we did invite him to the GBS, but he said no.
You're only going to do so much.
We would have liked him to do a keynote, but he didn't. He wasn't interested. So.
Oh well. I'll do it for you.
Yeah, cool.
I don't know what I talk about. I'll talk about something. Anesthetics.
Yeah.
Don't know. Right. So, any more questions? Let's see, and then we're going to wrap this up with Paul.
What was the controversial question? Or was that the one you just popped up?
Yeah, about Ray.
Oh, I
People love
see.
talking
Right.
about whole
Do-
Ray and my. Oh, it's like the whole. You go to a lot of shows and you've heard it all before. And when I was hosting the Bushcraft show, when everyone says about Ray versus Bear, and you're like, oh, for God's sake, just
Yeah. Well, I mean,
is what it is, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, he was instrumental in popularizing bushcraft in the UK, and he. Thank you, Tommy. Thank you. He was instrumental through Country Tracks, and then World of Survival. I think World of Survival was really interesting. That's where I really turned on to Ray's stuff. When he was with the Evenk and various other people, and that not so many people have seen those shows, but if you can get to see them, they're more anthropological. They're very interesting. And then of course we had the extreme survival shows, and then there was the bushcraft shows, that 10-part in 2 lots of 5, one of which Ray Goodwin was in on the Miss and Ivy, and that they were the kind of heyday, really. They were. Yeah. And when that 10-part came out in 2 lots of 5, I was already working with Ray at that point. They were filmed 2004, I think, mainly. They were really the kind of heyday, and he really popularized the subject matter to a wider audience through that particular set of shows as well, because they were really nicely produced. Ben Southwell and those guys at BBC did a really good job. I don't think the stuff that he made since then has had such an impact, but the books that he wrote, the survival book that he wrote originally, and then the bushcraft book that he wrote after that, they were really influential both on me and on other people. And so yeah, he has a big part. People of my age, I'm 50 next year, people around about my age,
Look it.
Thank you. That's why it's dark, right? I turn the lights now. People around about my age, a bit older, a bit younger, we kind of grew up, and we've been interested in the subject matter for long enough, kind of grew up watching Ray Mears, and big part of why we're involved, right? Certainly a big part of why I'm involved directly in the path that I've taken. Who knows what it would have been if it was different. I hadn't had that conversation with Ray after the trip in Sweden. I don't know. I would have found my way. There would have been a different path. But he's certainly been super important. So I can understand why people want to talk about him. And he does also have a reputation for being a bit grumpy as well, with people. So people like a little bit of tittle tattle, don't they, as well?
Love it. Yeah. Can I ask, why do they keep changing the location of the Bushcraft show? You're asking the 2 wrong people.
I'm absolutely the wrong person to ask about that.
Let's not go down that bit.
I can speculate, but it would be speculation.
No. Yeah. I don't know. I know David reasonably well. I don't know. I have no idea.
Apparently, the venue last year didn't really work, did it? According to everyone that I know that was there, they just said it was too far from the parking to the camping. Yes. The camping was horrible. It was full of brambles. They couldn't get the showers in through the gates. All this kind of. So it doesn't surprise me they moved from there. Beehive Farm was quite a nice venue, I thought. The one when we sponsored the show and we had big stalls there and stuff in the past, that was the best venue. The Beehive Farm one, I think. That was good. That was nice.
Awesome.
Why they moved from there, I've no idea. So.
Don't know. Yeah, you're asking the wrong people. Right, guys, let's see if there's any more questions, any random questions for Paul. The random, the better. Let's not talk about tree ID or knots or anything. Let's see. One question I actually asked Paul was at the outdoor festival last year, and that went a bit crazy over the internet. I have, as you know, I have these like crazy things pop into my head, and all I asked Paul was your introduction music for wrestling match, and you said Slayer.
I said Slayer. Yeah. And that was, I mean, I didn't know that question was coming. I was like just about to get on stage, and I'm thinking about what I'm going to say when I get on stage, and then Mark's there like, oh, if you were a wrestler, what would your intro music be? And I was like, well, okay, on the spot. It needs to be something pretty thumping and energetic and threatening. Well, I would say.
I just love it that I messed up all of your presentation, and people are not. Oh, Paul, that was great. I love talking about taking the memories home, taking photos, not taking physical things. No, they didn't talk about that. They just talked about me insulting Paul. Love it.
I didn't take it as an insult. I thought it was good. People, the YouTube comments, people seem to like the fact that I said that. So, and Rain in Blood, indeed. Yeah, maybe Rain in Blood. Capture of Sin, I think would be a good one. That's an old one, right? That's got quite a good bounce. I actually saw Slayer live in Edinburgh in about 91, 92. Wasn't a great venue for it, but they were good back in their heyday. Yeah.
ADC Thunderstruck.
Thunderstruck, yeah, that's a good one. It's another classic.
Oh god, Baby Shark. I'm so glad up front there, sitting around the campfire with the clients, that no one starts singing campfire songs. Well, we just discussed the introduction music. That was the last.
No one's going to start trying to sing Slayer around the campfire, are they? So I'm pretty safe there. I know your favorite song, Paul. I'm going to sing it for
you. You can interview anyone past or present on your podcast. Who would you choose?
Oh gosh. Well, I'll start with the past. Hopefully I'll still get through some of the present. But the past, Ernest Thompson Seton would be a good one.
Have you seen, Paul, that they're doing one with the Scouts? They're recreating the journey. I can't remember all the journey. Shut up. I can't remember all the information, so I'm not going to give you.
They are doing one.
Yeah.
Who's doing what?
You know when you half think of a
film.
No, you know when you have half the information in your head, and you think, "Why did I say this?" Because I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, carry on, Paul.
Well, when you remember what it is, you can tell us
next week.
Okay, right. Ernest Thompson Seton, Baden Powell, I think would be a good one, right? I mean, I know I'm kind of talking to the current audience, but I do think that would be genuinely interesting. Who else? Paul Provencher would be good.
Is it all camping people?
Well, for my podcast, right? That was the question, right?
Yeah.
So my podcast is Bushcraft Survival and Outdoor Life, right? So
what about if you did a Christmas special? And it could be anybody.
Who would be good? So just not camping.
Anybody.
Oh, goodness. You got me stumped there. I don't know.
Wow, this is a first.
Well, it's not that I couldn't. It's not that I'm not thinking of people, but what my brain is going is that the person.
You
know. So I don't know.
Music people.
Could be music people. You want people who are interesting that want to talk, and it's like some musicians are not very good at talking. That's why it's like I remember watching an interview with David Gilmour, the guitarist in Pink Floyd, and he isn't a great interviewee, and I can't remember who it was that was interviewing him. It was a BBC One, BBC Two show, I think, sort of an art show, and he made the point that that's how he expresses himself best, through playing the guitar. Like that's his most true form of expression. So it's like, I think there are a lot of, think about someone like Miles Davis. I mean, I don't know how good an interviewee he might have been, but he was a fantastic trumpet player, right? And that the way that they express themselves through the form of music is absolutely incredible. Whether or not they'd be the best person to interview, maybe you just want to listen to them play, right? So
rather than just talking.
So I'm thinking like certain film stars or writers. Hemingway would be an interesting one if we're talking about people who are alive or dead, right? I'm sure he'd have some stories, right? Orson Welles would be a good one, I think, right? Yeah.
What's the best wind-up you've done on a camp or course?
I'm not really a prankster. I kind of feel like this is one of my weaknesses. I'm not really a massive prankster. I've been involved in some, where I play along or support it, for sure. James, who works with me, who I know won't be listening to this because he's running a tracking course, frontier tracking course right now. He did some great ones over the years with sort of rubber snakes in camp sites and got people wound up about snakes, and then came out with a, so what's this?
And then bite his head off.
Yeah, one of the best ones that I ever saw. I didn't have anything to do with really, other than I was running the course. It was when I was still at Woodlaw, and we used to have this guy called Phil Pemberton who used to work with us, and he had such a wicked sense of humor. And this was towards the end of a week-long course, and we do nature walks, we do tree and plant walks. People, students are taking notes on identification and uses, and we've done bow drill and cordage making and natural shelters and loads of good stuff. And it's towards the end of the week, and Phil comes over to the group, and I knew this was going to happen, so I was in on it, right? But it was Phil's idea, so I can't claim any great creative credit for this. But he comes across and goes, sorry to interrupt, guys, girls, I've got something amazing to show you. You've all been really interested in nature all week. I've got this real rarity to show you. Come over here. It's just, it's about 100 meters down the trail there. So they all get up and they get the notebooks and the cameras, and they go off down the trail past the instructors camp, along the track down towards where some of the leaf shelters have been, and where we used to collect hazel and stuff. And there were a lot of beech trees and stuff around on the way down there, and some quite thick leaf litter. And he goes over towards the base of this tree, and he goes, look there. And at the base of this tree, there's this kind of thing, like a large fungus coming out, pushing through the leaves. And he goes, this is really unusual to see. They're quite rare, particularly this far north in the UK. You tend to get them a little bit further south in Europe, but this was Napoleon Bonaparte's favorite fungus. And they only kind of come out every few years, and you don't get that many of them. And it's why it's called the emperor fungus, right? Because when Napoleon was in power, this was his favorite fungus. And in fact, he had a whole company of men who would accompany him, and they'd set up their tents, on a campaign. Napoleon would have his command tents and everything, and he would have a company of men who would then go out into the local countryside and the local forest to find any emperor funguses that were around and bring them to him, and cooked in a particular sort of French way. And students are writing all this down, and and there's this thing, and it's like kind of green and yellow, and it's got this like sort of webbing over the top, and there's a bit of spores around it, like sort of white dust around on the leaf litter, and you can see where it's pushed up through the leaf litter, and like a small puff ball, like a small giant puff ball, so bigger than a little puff ball, but smaller than a giant puff ball. And he turns to the group of students and says, who would like to pick the emperor fungus? Who wants the honor? So you just need a penknife, just cut it at the base, take it out away from the mycelium sort of thing. Someone's like, yeah, I'll do it. So he goes to take it. And on the bottom of this thing, this ball that's removed, is a sticker that says Cantaloupe, £1.99. Yeah. So he'd convinced them all that this cantaloupe melon was some rare fungus. And in the context of it, like, being like placed underneath the leaf litter, just emerging with he sprinkled some flour around to look like spores. It looked like this weird fungus, and they were like, he got them all 12 students, hook, line, and sinker, and they were like, you get like, and man, he was beside himself. That is the best one I've ever like. It was just because it was so close, sailing so close to the wind and so close to what could have been true. That was just brilliant. But I can't claim the creative genius for that. It wasn't me, but I was very glad to be part of it, and I still tell that story to this day, nearly 15 years later, I think. So.
Random question: favorite biscuit, and do you dunk?
Dark chocolate, digestive, and I sometimes dunk.
Ooh.
Not always.
One random thing that I learned from you, Paul, that you have no idea that I learned this from you, but over the years I've got to learn in a professional way, and we've become good mates and stuff over the years, I hope. And one thing I've learned was that you don't really post much about your partner and your location. You don't tell people where you live. And I remember you explaining to me the reasons why. And then from that very day, I don't ever say that I'm at camp. I try and post that I'm going scout camp the week after that we've actually been. And it's all because of security. And
Yeah.
I didn't really think of it until we got chatting one night, and that's you were just saying that, and I thought, you know what, that's just one of the random things I've learned from you.
Yeah, I mean, most people out there are perfectly nice and decent, but not that I'm a not that I'm a famous football player, but you hear about football players having their houses burgled when they're playing an away match and all this kind of stuff. And there are some nasty people around that take advantage of people's openness, right? And I remember talking. There are other reasons as well as not outside of me. Why people should be careful. I remember talking to Leon McCarran, who I've had on my podcast, and him talking about traveling around the Middle East and doing some amazing journeys, from the north eastern end of the Mediterranean all the way down to the top of Egypt and places. Some amazing hikes and some amazing scenery, which it's a shame more people don't get to see those places. But he would always be very careful about lagging his posts because some of those places aren't always safe to travel through if people feel like you're worth interfering with. And so there's all sorts of reasons why people are careful with social media and the timings of what they post. Remove location tags. Like there's so much metadata attached to images still. When people post them directly off their phones, there's so much metadata attached, and all you need is Photoshop. Like I can take a photo off someone's Instagram feed, but not so much Instagram. Actually, it's hard you can't get photos off Instagram actually, but off a Facebook feed. Open it up in Photoshop, and I can, if you got geolocation on your photographs, I can see you're in your kitchen. I can find where your house is just from a photo on Facebook.
Yeah.
You need to be careful with that shit. Not that I would want to do that, but it's possible even without being particularly sophisticated about it.
No, absolutely. Yeah. But that's one of the random things I love from you. Just kind of doing. Right, Paul. Let's go back to your scouting days. If you could pick a new chief scout, who would it be? Do you know much about chief scouts? Do you know who it is at the moment?
It's still Bear Grylls, isn't it?
Yeah. So there is Bear's coming to the end of his time very soon, and that they're going to be starting the look for a new chief scout. I have an idea who it might be. It's got to be female, though. That's my feelings.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. I mean, again, I'm talking out of school here. I'm not the right person to ask. Like, I would imagine, looking at it from the outside, I imagine that what scouting wants from a chief scout is someone who's going to inspire people to join the scouts and to take up scouting, and I think Bear's done a fantastic job of that, right?
Definitely
been super successful, almost too successful in some respects, right? At times, I know I heard from scout leaders where they were struggling for for leaders in their areas. Yeah, I know that, Jeremy. Yeah, there are some fantastic people who are well known, who are outdoorsy and active. That so the names that are coming up here are all good. I could see the logic in any of those that are coming up. Kate Middleton, Steve Backshall, really good people. I wouldn't like to put, I feel like misplaced to say, but yeah, I mean, someone who's going to be inspirational, that's got a lot of energy, who's got some youthful energy about them, but also some experience. Yeah, I mean, lots. You can think of lots of, sports people, people involved in TV, people who've been involved in adventure TV, people who young people look up to. Yeah, I mean, but I wouldn't. I'm sorry, I'm evading the question, but I might not be the right person to ask from the perspective of I don't watch a lot of television. I don't really know who's speaking to the youth, if you know what I mean.
Speaking
At the moment.
do you? Yeah, I like the way you
So
said.
I probably would choose someone who's probably 20 years too old.
Megan Hine.
Yeah,
Matt wants to know your preferred style of whiskey.
Well, back in the day, I used to really like the kind of smoky, peaty Islay whiskies, but I think because I've spent so much time on the Spey in the last decade and a bit, the Spey sides, and there's a lot of variety in the Spey side. So I think generally these days I like a nice Spey side, like Glenlivet is always not, an 18-year-old Glenlivet is hard to beat. Something like that. Yeah.
Nice. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
I think levitation would be pretty cool.
More like David Blaine.
Yeah.
Just hover up on the side of a bus.
Well, it would make river crossings easier, right?
Your red canoe as well. Love it. What Jeremy is saying, it's easy to slate Bear, but he's there for a reason. You can't deny he's had an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's the whole point of a G Scout, isn't it? Is to get out and publicize scouting.
Yeah. I think that was an inspired choice on the part
do you
of
use a spork or conventional knife and fork?
I use a spoon. If I'm talking, are you talking about a home? Or are you talking about?
I was just
my drawers at home are just full of sporks. No, I when I'm in the woods, it's a spoon.
I don't get the spork thing, to be honest, Paul. I really don't.
Well, I know some people like them, but I just use a spoon, and if I need to cut something up that the spoon won't go through, I use my pocket knife. So.
Terry Tips. No, I'm trying to think of that guy, the road rage guy. Do you know who I am? What was his name?
Yeah, that I never saw that at the time, and somebody mentioned that to me a while ago, and, I have no idea what you're talking about, and they had to send it to me. But yeah, apparently that was like a meme that went around for ages, but I didn't see it at the time. So I know who you mean now, but yeah.
Terry Tips, that's off Phone Jacker, isn't it?
Phone Jacker, yeah.
You can always tell a person by a couple of uses.
Well, I tell you what, I did a trip. Matt, who's on there, who just put Terry Tibbs, right? I did a hike with Matt quite a few years ago now, and we did the Scottish 4000, so all the peaks that are above 4,000 feet in Scotland. So there's the Munros, which are all the mountains that are above 3,000 feet, and there's nearly 300 of them. Well, there's only a handful, about 9 or 10, that are above 4,000 feet, but some of them are on the east coast in the Cairngorms, and some of them are over on towards the west, over near Ben Nevis. And so we did a hike from pretty much from one side of Scotland to the other, linking the 4,000s. And yeah, this was Matt's idea, and somehow I forgot to pack my spoon. And as I've just announced, I don't tend to take a knife and a fork or a spork, and it's just like I had a spoon, and I don't know how I managed to lose my spoon. I might have left it we were on a campsite the night before we started the hike. I might have lost it there. I don't know, but anyway, I didn't have a spoon. So what I did initially, until I managed to get a replacement, what I did initially was use a trick that you see in books, and it's normally birch bark. So you take a circle of material and you fold part of the circle into itself, so you make a cone. It's a simple thing, but then you need to sort of pin it so it doesn't open out again. And the way that you would make a little spoon or a ladle is you'd split a stick. So you take a flat circle of material, you put a crease into the center, and you fold it up so that's overlaid. It becomes like a shallow cone, and then where the bit that's overlapped is, you put the split stick on, and it's a handle, and it holds the whole thing together. And that's a way that people make dipping spoons with bark, for example. But exactly that. Yeah, you are a genius at like this Googling and finding stuff. Someone like you, if people watch this, they could almost accuse us of it being planned, but I think it's probably true.
And if everyone, well, most people watching know me, I don't plan any of these.
No,
so
no.
this is going
And
with
most
the flow.
people that know me will know that I can just talk like this for hours if I'm asked to, without any planning whatsoever. So I made that, but I didn't use birch bark. What I used was, it's not birch bark. What I used was the top of a tin of Marvel, a tub of Marvel that we'd bought from the supermarket, and we bagged it into
Marvel?
Powdered milk.
Okay.
But it's the one that comes in the cardboard tub, and it's got a plastic top, and then within that there's a foil seal that you pull off. And so we'd been bagging it. We bagged this Marvel up into a Ziploc bag to take it with us for the trip, and I kept this silver piece of foil, and that's what I made my spoon out of. I folded that like the birch bark, and then used it, and that was my spoon to start off with until I got a replacement. So
nice. Right, guys, this is going to be the last question for Paul, only because I've got a 5 a.m. alarm clock for the hospital. What is, or what would be your favorite place for an exhibition or adventure? Thanks, PJ.
It sounds a bit predictable, but I do love going back to Canada for canoe trips. It to me, there's just something complete about the bushcraft skills, the navigation skills, the paddling skills, and that environment being the home of the canoe. Yes, you can do some fantastic canoe trips in the UK. You can do fantastic canoe trips in Australia. You can do great canoe trips all over Europe. But the home of the canoe, where you really needed it to get around, where it was invented, the Canadian style of canoe, obviously, was Canada, in particular parts of Canada. And just that huge expanse of forest. And it's not all just pine forest either. There's lots of broadleaf forest with the water and just all of the elements that you need. Thanks, Harold. Yeah. So, for me, Northern Ontario, Manitoba, those sorts of places. And, I have a book on my shelf. It's not in this room, actually. It's in another room, but it's a big book. Like, it's a kind of coffee table size book. It's about that broad, quite about A4 height, but much wider. It's about 2 A4 at least wide. And it's about telephone direct. Not that anybody knows what a telephone directory is these days, but it's like, thick, and nice. I like Algonquin as well. Yeah. And it's called the Canoe Atlas of the Little North. Right. So this area that they're talking about is not even all of canoe country, right? It's Northern Ontario and into, Manitoba, but there is a book that thick, that big, on canoe routes just in that area. And then, of course, there's many more places, many other places you could go. And so somewhere with that much potential for adventure and expeditioning, I think it would be churlish, having been there a few times, to say, yeah, that's you are like a flipping Google genius. Like, how you get this up and on. That is the book, but it's big. It's like one of the biggest books I own. And it's just that bit next to Hudson's Bay there, right? So it's not even all of canoe country. And there is so much potential there in that area for canoe tripping. And obviously you can then trip further than that. So having been there just a few times, I think it would be churlish to say, yeah, been there, done that. There's more to do there. So yeah, that's a favorite place. And I don't think anybody could ever exhaust it. Yeah.
Can you answer this question, Paul?
Will you be alive on Thursday?
No, will I be live? Not alive.
I know.
Oh, it's been funny. Yeah, I'll be live streaming from Scout Hall at 6:30.
And vlogging on Sundays normally. He doesn't I listen to what Mark says. He doesn't normally do Tuesdays. He's normally live on Thursday and vlogs on Sundays. Yeah.
Look at you. Well done. Did Mark train you or train Mark on how to talk for hours? Actually, there's a reason for this, Paul. There's two reasons. One, the first reason is working on the radio when I was working on Heart and Capital. You kind of learn to talk about whatever. But how I learned to talk about small things is being in the hospital and in the anesthetic room. And I come across lots of patients, all different. Some are nervous, some want to talk, some are nervous who don't want to talk. And it's a bit of a skill that we don't get taught at hospital school, at university. You just learn over the years about how you just pick up, and some people just want to talk rubbish, and you've just got to go with the flow and make small talk. So it's kind of part of my job.
Yeah, and part of my job is standing up in front of people all week and teaching them and communicating with them.
Helping them fall asleep fast.
And just chatting with people around the campfire, right? And so, yeah, I think you need to, I come on these things with people, generally the brief is they want me to talk. The host, like Mark, wants me
1
to
hour,
talk.
I said.
Yeah, well.
Oh, Mr. Kirtley. Don't be like that.
But but that's the point, right? It's just like, the brief is that people want to hear from me, not necessarily so much from the host when it's an interview format, right? Or it's a chat back and forth. And I've done a couple of podcasts recently for people, one in South Africa, one in Canada, and they ask you questions and they want to know the answers. And yeah, I'm happy to talk. But equally, I'm very happy listening. Those of you that have listened to my own podcast know that I can not talk very much as well if I want to hear from what other people have to say as well. So I think the skill is to be a good listener a lot of the time as well. And I do try. It's hard with these online things. Like I think it's important not to try and talk over the top of people, but it's hard, isn't it? There's a bit of a lag sometimes, Mark, and it's a bit tricky. You kind of think someone's finished and then they haven't, and there's a bit of like, no, you go first. No, you go first. No, after you. And there's a bit of that, but I try and avoid that. Just try and give a full answer, and try and see the subject as a round, and gives. And also the other thing for me as well is some of the questions I get asked a lot, and I've got like a pretty standard quick answer to it. And other things people will ask, I'm like, I haven't thought about it that way, and you kind of end up sort of thinking out loud. But people like that. I think it gives them some insight into your thinking as well. So I don't mind doing it as long as people don't mind listening to it. So
yeah, well, there we are. I think, guys, just rounding up. Any more comments? I'm just going through any more questions. No, there's not. Let me just put up Paul's website once again. If you want to get hold of Paul, it's paulkirtley.co.uk. On Instagram, on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Paul's all over the socials. And if you want to find out more about the show that Paul's talking about, the GBS, the link is down here, and I'll also put it in the description. And I've posted some stuff already on Facebook. And if you're following Bush Scout, there's a link on Bush Scout. If you follow Terry Longhurst, there's a link on Terry's page, all where to get the tickets and stuff.
It'd be great to see some people there. Yeah,
it'll be an amazing event. Cool. Ian, thank you very much for tuning in from Canada. It's been awesome. Okay, nice. Right,
that's never fun. Like I remember listening to a podcast he was a climber. It was a Tim Ferriss podcast, and there was this really good climber, and this guy just wasn't interested in answering the question. They weren't bad questions, and that's such hard work as an interviewer. Such hard work as well. Yeah, you got to respect the interviewer. Yeah. And
on the flip side is when they want to talk too much, and you got to rein them in. I remember interviewing who was I? Paul Daniels one day, and he was very drunk, really drunk, and it ruined the interview. And
not a lot, just a bit.
Not a lot of people like that, but yeah. No, Paul, shush. Stop with these questions. Max, awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Max.
Guys, big thank you to Paul for joining us. It's been brilliant for coming up for 2 hours when it was only meant to be an hour, but sharing lots of Paul's stories. And I joke about it all the time, but Paul's got amazing blogs. I've learned so much for it, and all the podcasts, YouTubes and stuff. They are awesome. Yeah.
Thanks for your support, Mark. It was always appreciated. And thank you to all of your viewers and listeners, either live or who will see this later. Appreciate your interest in what I do and what I have to say. I don't take it for granted. So thank you.
Cool. Awesome. And yeah, beautiful. And Terry,
cheers, Terry.
Paul will tell you about the curry night, but not now.
No, well, Mark's explained that we can't, you know, we'll share it on social media 2 weeks afterwards.
Exactly. Right, guys, whatever you're doing, have a great week. Enjoy Scouts, whatever you're doing this week. And like I say, I'll see you Thursday at 6:30.
Enjoy the spring weather. Get outside. Enjoy. Take care. Bye.
Tree ID.
Indeed.
See you guys.